when someone is angry at somebody, that's a form of love
Right.
that is further down on that scale. It's
Right.
like, so like you're
Resonance.
saying, yeah.
Right.
So it's just like it's all in the same space. It's just on the different, yeah. The
We're
frequency.
energy processors, basically, and the capacity we're able to handle depends on the denseness of our own frequency to handle outside frequencies. That's what respond and react to me is. One who is high in resonance responds. One who's low in resonance reacts. And so that is one of those sovereignty things too, because ultimately to get angry, you fuck yourself. Sorry, because we're on the podcast.
No, dude, totally cool.
If you get angry, you're really just screwing yourself. You're really just screwing yourself up.
Yeah.
And I learned that even coming to truth that a lot of times it would turn into anger, and I was just like, whoa, like there's love in truth, so I don't have to be so angry about it. And then that changes my approach and even how I deliver what I'm going to say, because it's ultimately not about personality, color, background. It's ultimately just what the truth is. And the truth is that when people hear the truth, it will resonate with them. But the truth has to be put out in a way that's done in love and not in so much as in like anger or hate, because there's a resonancy there. If somebody's dense in resonance, they're going to tend to respond to you with hate when they hear the truth, because they're still dense. So, they haven't learned to open up their mind and be open to other thoughts of knowledge or schools of knowledge to bring into the equation to logically process, because ultimately we're always learning.
And that makes me think about escapism.
Right.
And when people are in that place, they escape from that truth, and it's their natural. It's like a way of, it's the reaction to get away from it because they're afraid of it. It's the fear sort of thing,
Right.
where the real true way to do it is to face it,
Right.
and to surrender to it, and to be there. So like we're in a moment of anger. It's to be in that acceptance and to surrender with love,
Right.
and to be with it, and that is so important, and as part of that is kind of like a higher level sort of thing to do, is to pull yourself away and to see yourself, to see how the reaction and learn from it,
Yeah.
and that's like the ultimate. On a personal level, that's how an ultimate goal of mine is that if I ever get in that state, it's nobody else. It's my own insecurities.
Right.
Just like I don't feel like judgments really exist.
Right.
Judgments are just your own insecurities being reflected outward.
Absolutely.
And so that that having that moment of surrender and looking down at as a neutral kind of party, as what you're seeing is so key.
And even a sense of judgmental, being that everything happens within first. Judgment can never be cast from another person that can't read the mind of another, because that's really ultimately what judgmental is the capacity to be able to judge somebody's mental, play, or where they are mentally, right? So honestly, nobody can judge anybody unless they become, telekinetic or whatever you call it, where you can telepathic, to where you can read somebody's mind, because then in essence you can get into somebody's head and actually truly know who they really are. Whereas if you can't, you really just still taking their word for who they say they are, which you observe, and nobody knows who anybody is, because nobody can get in anybody's head. They can only know somebody, what that person shows them. And so even when it comes to the point of fear, and people often fear what they don't understand, and what I've come to realize is that the lack of knowledge is the issue, because without knowledge or without study, there's no knowledge, and without knowledge, there's no confidence, and with no confidence, there's no action, and with no action, there's no results. So the dumber you can make somebody, the more confidence you can take from them, because they're a robot. You can tell them who they are and what they do and whatever and as long as you keep them safe, and as long as you keep them, fed, they're good. But that's where people go wrong, and that's that fear. But the fear that I know, and what most people have their acronym for fear, and this one I actually learned from Moorish science in their studies, that fear is an elemental thing. That fearing the Lord and Lord meaning law, not like an entity, but Lord means to rule, or to make rule over, or a law over, and that law being the elemental principles of fire, earth, air, and river, being the four elements that create man. We are supposed to reverence those because ultimately those are what create and destroy life. And so all fear should be abolished, because the only thing one should fear is fear itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
To put it in that way, yeah, it's
so
true.
Really, like, you are it. When you are one with nature, there really is nothing to fear. And 9 times out of 10, I'm not saying that there's no discernment out there, but as you rise in resonancy within your body, and this temple that was made without hands begins to play its song, and that song is in tune, and that tune is then recognized by nature, and nature takes care of its own. Just like a mother, get back to a mother and a child. Right.
It's working with us. It's like conspiring with us to make our higher self. That's what nature does, and in all of its places. When there's a river or that needs, that needs like grounding, or if there's like animal, it's like it's all working in rhythm to make the most purest form, and we're no different. We're part of nature, so it's always working with us, helping us to.
The further you move from nature, the further you move away from yourself. So the more they come out with and these phones are great and everything, but eventually they're going to have to go, because ultimately anything that's a medium in your life will atrophy your natural ability to perform that function. So anytime you say take a supplement, right, and you already can supplement that yourself, if you keep taking that supplement, it's going to turn off the mechanism in the body that makes that supplement, because it depends on it. And so everything they know from the outside world is everything is a distraction, and that's why going inwardly, and why the kingdom is found inwardly, because ultimately one's reality happens inwardly first. So as they come up with meta and all these different things that are going to try to entrap people into this false reality, they're just going to move further and further away from themselves and find themselves in a situation where they no longer are their own being, that they're being controlled by something that they don't want to be controlled by. And they've given away their sovereignty for safety and basically food. When we literally have everything we need at our fingertip, and it's our birthright that it's been taken from us. And all we got to do is really just rise up, and not in a sense of violence, but rise up meaning get that inside, that kundalini or whatever people talk about. It's like some of these words have been so overused, but that sacred secretion that happens within that body, that magnetic and that electrical solution in the body that is, purified in the sacrum and rises and then pops that, like, that's how you rise up. That's why they say the revolution won't be televised, because revolution happens inwardly in each individual that changes the circumstance of whatever it is, because it ain't going to be able to, just like the kingdom can't be taken by force, everything has to be taken by going within and within silence, and then getting yourself right. And as many people start to do that, like the 100th monkey theory or whatever, like when so many people start to do it, it just starts to spark in the minds of everybody, and whether somebody lives over there, they're going to be able to get that, and then we all start getting on this thing where everything is going to change and nothing can be done.
Kind of like how a lot of the pyramids were seen in different parts of the world, and without any sort of supposed connection that was known. And not, when I say pyramids, not like the Great Pyramid of Giza, like all the different temples too. Similar architecture. It's already, we already can see that in all different places, and unearthing a lot of the ancient technologies.
Right, and they're built they're built after us. Same thing. They're built after the body. They still are energy. Produce. They harvest energy and they produce energy. And you got the king's chamber and the queen's chamber, which is the pineal gland and the pituitary gland. All these structures were based off of nature and nature's rhythm and structure, and everything worked within a symbiotic nature where it's not thought about, it's involuntary. Like we don't have to ask the trees to give us carbon dioxide, and they don't have to We don't have to ask them for oxygen. It's just is, right? It's symbiotic. It's not even thought about. And so when man gets to that certain stage where he himself has become whole, the same relationship we have with the trees will have each other, whereas giving and receiving is not looked at as something as is a social thing, but it's a natural thing, and that's how nature works.
When it becomes, when nature doesn't become monetized.
Right. That's when it started getting messed up, because even money, which is really a spin-off of, and even in their understanding of what they're doing, these corporations, money is milk and honey. It is that of the ability to take a currency and produce something for it tangibly. Whereas if we didn't have money, we have that ability to do that through the brain, through the pineal gland again, where you can actually create in physical form what you need without having to pay for it. It will come to you, whatever you call it, the law of attraction, whatever fancy name. If you just get down to the nitty gritty and just study the Bible and how things work, that the same way it works inside, it works out. So if you actually need something or even want something, the intention behind what is want and the attachment to what is wanted will either keep you from getting it or allow you to get it. Because ultimately you're not supposed to have desire, in the sense of being sovereign. But if you wanted to create something, you do have the capability to be able to do that. But that's what you would call your dark side and your light side. The dark side isn't necessarily bad. It's only bad when it's unchecked. And that's what the divine's job is. The divine side of the mind is to put that masculine energy in balance with hers, right? Because ultimately, woman created man to bring balance into herself, because she is a chaos being. She is emotional. At some point, she saw lack within herself and created man in a physical form, because it first started within her in a spiritual form, because she needed some balance into herself. And so being the self or the creator she was able to be just like a 3D printer. So whatever they can conceive, obviously if they can bring something from spirit to physical, then they can manifest within themselves with just thought and have it come out. So they created man in their image in order to bring balance back to themselves. Beauty and the Beast, the frog and the frog and the prince. What happens for them to achieve whatever royalty they're supposed to be? They have to first be kissed by the divine. Always the divine. Because the divine is that comes to disrupt everything that's physical. Right? She's the disrupt. Even the word Mary, Jesus and all that, Mary means rebellion. It's that sacral energy that comes up and just destroys all paradigms and brings everything back into truth, which ultimately is a destroyer, but it's also the rebirth of another consciousness, or that being has become God, basically. That's what enlightenment is. When Adam and Eve were in the garden, when they ate the apple, God said, when you ate the apple, you would be like me. Why is that such a bad thing? Aren't we supposed to be unto God? Doesn't the Bible say that we are gods? 2 times, but both God and Jesus said it in the Old and New Testament, that we are gods. So at some point, there's discernment in these scriptures. But even within the lie, there's a truth. If one is able to first tap in and do the work inwardly, because ultimate knowledge doesn't come without work. One that wants to access the knowledge that's unseen first has to tear down their temple and rebuild it. And that's why in mystery schools, one was expected to fast for 40 days and 40 nights before they were even considered to even be a part of learning the higher knowledges within the mystery schools of Kemet in Egypt. Because one has experience, they can gain that higher knowledge. And one has to be able to die to ego in order to do that, because knowledge is power and you have to be responsible with it, and it's free to everybody, but only to the layman who wants to put in the work. Because anybody that's willing to cheat to get that is willing to use it against people. See? And so there's a rites of passage to knowledge. And one who is not ready for knowledge will not get knowledge, because that person will not do the self-work that's required in order to access it. So they will always be shut off from the knowledge.
Yeah, that's amazing, the religious background that you have to pull from.
Yeah.
Growing up, I never had that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just tended and enjoyed to be more around more people of religious background because they tend to be more spiritual and they tend to be more like mystical, magic, believe more in magic sort of things,
and they have that foundation of the literal sense anyway, and that helps, you know.
And it's beautiful just to hear it, because I never I've read Genesis, but that for me that's the farthest I've gone in terms of sitting down and reading it, because I've seen excerpts and I've seen all different pieces and I've seen people kind of allude to it and show it, and I'll read those little pieces, but I'll never gone through and actually read it and have that kind of upbringing. So to hear that from you, it's really interesting to hear all the different pieces of it, because I don't have that background, but I'm around those people that do, and it's not only in those books too, because like you were just saying, Beauty and the Beast and these movies and The Matrix is one of the best, because like we interact with all these people on a daily basis, and The Matrix is such a good description of the ancient Smith popping up wherever you go and regurgitating the narrative, and that is exactly what is kind of happening, where because to be, you know, wherever you go, you're gonna end up attracting what you're attracting and what you're thinking about, and that's why I'm a big believer in, like, whatever you put your mind into is what you need to be seeing. Whatever you're around, you're gonna start bringing more around. So you can see the pain in the world, you can see the beauty in the world, and so it's what you're eventually gonna go out into the world and you're gonna see something that might not be what you're wanting to, but that is, you know, part of the matrix, and that's part of it.
It's like Willy Wonka said, you know, it's the power of the imagination, man. Like, if the more imaginative you are, the more you have the ability to create and have that type of beautiful life, because you're able to create that for yourself within the constructs of your mind. Because ultimately, the mind is the paintbrush to your reality, and so the inner world will always be in direct control of your outer world. No matter what, you know, the outside doesn't control the inside controls the outside. And so it might work in tandem with some things on the outside, but ultimately the universe is inside of you, so everything that we say is out there is really just in here, because there is no out there. There's only just in here. Even like space missions and things like that, even when it comes to time travel, all those things are something that I believe that can be experienced outwardly, but truly the way it makes sense is that it's all done interdimensionally, that it's a state of consciousness one goes into to be able to experience that part of the world. And that's what I know that fasting offers when you get into that light body, and why even in scriptures, before anybody could come to God, to the throne seat of God, they first then had to fast. So that's to tell you something right there. So one has to be pure and clean before they come to the divine in order to ask or gain anything. There's that password to get in, you know. And so there's a way to approach this way, this mental realm, where you can actually tap into the backdrop of the operating process that we see with our eyes. You know, it's getting behind the curtain of the one that's making the noise with the thunder and the lightning, and you start seeing everything for what it is, the zeros and ones, so have you. But when you're able to tap into that void, or what they call that astral realm, or whatever you want to call it, I call it the womb, because that's what it felt like to me. It just felt like I was in my mother's womb, and I was just spinning around, and things were happening and coming to me. But in order to access those parts of the mind, or the collective mind, or whatever we call it, Akasha, one has to be a clean conduit. You just can't come anyway. You know what I'm saying? And there's ways to achieve it through mushrooms, through different types of plant medicines, but even then, those are only for the people who are having a hard time opening their minds. Once that happens, those things should really not have to be used anymore, because they're really modalities to direct you in the path of doing it naturally, which when you take the plant medicines, in order, like most times plant medicines, depending on whether they're masculine or feminine, have a different reaction, but ultimately it takes a purging of oneself in order to access the information that they have to give you. There's a throwing up or something that happens that has to be released before something can be then refilled, right? Because a vessel is only good when it's empty. You can't fill something up if it's already full, right? So in order to get something new, you then have to sacrifice something. You have to use up what's in that vessel so it can be poured back in. And so that very act of fasting is being able to contact those altered states of consciousness and be able to move within those places, and ultimately get the same effect you would taking plant medicine, except doing it the natural way. You're actually cleaning your body completely out, whereas if you're just taking the plant medicine, it's just a cheat code to get the mind to a place where it normally wouldn't be able to get to in an unnatural state. Because in a natural state, you're able to tap into those realms whenever you want. But if you're acting unnaturally, you need drugs to get there. That's why people become drug addicts. They're chasing the divine. Most drugs are named after females because everybody has mother issues. You know why? Because the mother is the one that was attacked first. And then it goes back to law. It's all tied in because of the way that the government treats the mother, and the mother gives up her stewardship over the child and gives it to the state when the child's born, because we've now relied on the doctors instead of natural births, where we do them in our own homes, because women are naturally their own doula. You know, they know how their body works, if anybody, but if they become detached from who they are, then they need somebody else to tell them how to do it. But, you know, there's women out there that actually know this to be true, that a mother knows what she's supposed to do, and that when it happens, it should be a mother and a mother experience, a father experience, and them working together tandemly to get the baby out the correct way, make sure the nutrients gets in there, and then this precious package that just was delivered, right?
It's the culmination of the sexual act.
Right.
Private.
Right. And so then it becomes corporate once you take it into the hospital, and then when you get your birth certificate, then you become incorporated, and then the mother unknowingly gives her rights over to the state for her child, which, you know, then they have rights to come take that child if they want, or they've got rights to tell that child this, that, or the other, because first they've messed up, or this construct, which is a patriarch, knows that it's formerly a matriarch. And so what happens is man, in the physical form or the masculine form, man himself has tried to be domineering over the god, and you can't do that. There's going to be repercussion for that, and the patriarchy is going to find that out, because we live in a matriarchy. It ain't going to work. You know, we live in a matriarchy in the sense is that everything comes from the womb. It's all womb related. You know what I'm saying? It's all regeneration, and regeneration happens in the same place that creativity does, and that's in the solar plexus where life is formed, right? And so the more they attack women, the more they're attacking us, the more they're going to separate people from nature, and ultimately people won't be nature anymore, but they'll be a product of man. Patented and controlled.
Yeah.
Like everything else.
Yeah, the birth certificates, the straw man that get created, the social security numbers.
Yep. And the woman has to take back control, because ultimately she's the one that brings the beings or the gods into the realm. She's the gatekeeper. The man is the gatekeeper of the gatekeeper. See what I'm saying? The man, they separated the man out of the home, and now the woman is left there wide open, whereas that she created something outside of herself to protect her. Smart. If I was a god, I don't want to use my energy trying to protect myself. I'd create something that would protect me too. So ultimately everything they're doing, everything in nature goes back to the woman, and the woman needs to be protected, but it's also the woman who's going to rise up within changing themselves first that's going to overthrow all of this, because it starts with woman first.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then man has to get back into accordance with woman to protect her from these corporations that are trying to rape her for her resources, like they do the land, and try to take away everything that our birthright stands for and what our birthright is. And that's also biblical with Jacob and Esau and all those different things in the Bible, where birthright is a thing that we're born with that can be taken away if one is thrusted into the darkness of carnality and forgets who they are, and they give up their sovereignty for safety, just like Esau did with Jacob. You know, Esau gave his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of lentils. He was hungry, came back from the hunt or from a fight, fighting Osiris, I think it was, supposedly in the Bible, and he gave his birthright over for a bowl of beans, which lentil actually means the top post. Like when you look deep into Scripture, not just for what the surface is saying, but what's actually being said. When Jacob and Esau were born, they're twins, and so Esau, the firstborn, gets the birthright, right? Naturally, the firstborn gets the birthright in that type of theology. And so Jacob was the supplanter because he grabbed the heel of Esau, which is ultimately the divine. It's the disruptor of the chaos. It's the one who comes to bring light to darkness, right? Because Esau was a hunter. You know, he was of the flesh, very ruddy, very redheaded, very fiery, very, you know, in the flesh. You know, Jacob was the one that was destined for righteousness because he is that is hidden. He's in the secret place, and then when he rises up, he supplants that darkness and brings it down, and then it gets a name change, which is why Jacob got a name change in Genesis. In Genesis 32:30, he gets his name changed to Israel, which is basically the male and female aspect of the mind that then creates God. So is Isis, Ra is Ra, and which is the feminine aspect of the feminine and masculine aspect of the mind, and then them becoming balanced again creates El, which is God. So one becomes Israel in that they get a name change because their whole intellect, their whole consciousness changes. In the sense of, I'll show you this, and I've really never done this on a podcast, but I want to show you something that makes the Bible fun. So if I go to Genesis 32.
Yeah, what confused me about reading Genesis was all the different dates and the different numbers and the names, because they were just firing away these things, and I didn't really have
I don't understand all of it completely, but I do know that a lot of it is numerology, a lot of it is astrology, so it goes really, really deep. But even on surface level of the truth, there's things that are seen that don't have to really be dug for too much. But when I was talking about the enlightenment process, the book of the Bible is essentially the temple. It's basically the human body, and it's the mind. And you've got the carnal mind and the spiritual mind. When you have a Bible laid out in front of you, you open it up, you have your Old Testament to the left and your right Testament to the right. It's for a reason. Because the Old Testament would be what would be called how original man began. That would represent the carnal mind, or the old mind, right? When you had the laws and the sacrifices and all those things, and then you come into this period of time where Christ is born, and then you have this revelation of not needing certain material aspects to be able to be governed, right? In the sense of law not being something that's tangible, but something spiritual, in that it's an operation of natural things within the world and in the species itself, right? So these laws govern how things work. So when we talk about laws, we're talking about mentality. You have carnal and you have spiritual. In the Bible it says that the carnal mind will always be at enmity with the spirit because they can't be one. Because one has to take over the other. And when Jesus came on the scene, that was that form of enlightenment, the Christos, or the Christ mind, or that which has been enlightened, right? And so once one has been enlightened, he has died to self and has been resurrected and reborn into a new man with a new mind, with a new intellect, and all things that were old were passed away, meaning that we're no longer in the carnal mind, because the carnal mind ultimately is bondage. That's what keeps us away from our divinity. Even in marriage, when one goes into the marriage altar, he must lift the veil to kiss his bride, which is an ultimate form of rites of passage of one achieving internal matrimony before he finds his woman. That's why one has to love himself and find his divine within himself before he'll ever be able to find the divine outside of himself. But in this situation in Genesis 32:30, God is supposedly wrestling with Jacob, or an angel. An angel is just light. Light being that we're communicated through the heavens through light, right? Rays of light from the sun, cosmic energy, all these things in different densities manifest itself as different angles of light, depending on how they hit the Earth's surface or whatever. Not the Earth, the way that this dome.
That's another conversation. Yeah. Oh my God.
But there's different ways that this thing works. And so as Jacob is wrestling this angel, you notice his name is still Jacob, and he's like wrestling him on this mountain. And as a child, I would read this and I would take it literal because we were taught literal. But I'll just read a little bit of it. And it says that, and Jacob was left alone. And alone is when everything usually takes place as alone as being within, being all one, being that there's no outside distraction, that you're going into like a meditation and you're becoming one to access God, right? Because God can only be accessed through self, through the pineal gland, which I'll show. And when he saw that he prevailed not against that angel as he was fighting him, because everybody going through a change or this change in intellect, you're fighting old ideologies to replace them with ones that make more sense, that are more truth-based and not just superstition. So there's this wrestling of cognitive dissonance of, would I do this or do that? It's the devil and the angel, right? And so, and when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh. The angel touched the hollow of Jacob's thigh. And the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And so what happened is the angel, as they were wrestling, because the angel saw that he wasn't winning against him, he hit him in the thigh. But when he hit him in the thigh, he told Jacob that was his blessing from the angel. And as a child, I'd be like, man, F that. I don't want to meet no angel, because if an angel's going to come and just bless me by fucking my hip or messing my hip up, what kind of, literally speaking, like, why would I want that? But as I dug deeper as time went on, and my intellect grew as I was changing and purging and cleaning myself out, things like this jumped out at me. And it says, and he said, let me go, for the day breaketh. Means the sun is coming up. Remember, the sun is rising, which it also does within the body when we're coming to apocalyptic situation, which is just revelation. Apocalypse just means the revealing of something. And so when we become right, so when we are revealed certain things, we fight against them. But once we let go and surrender to those things, it's like new day breaks forth. It's like epiphany. It's like a light has come on, like day breaks, right? And so that is a blessing in the sense that he got hit in the thigh allegorically, because when you go and dig deep into what the thigh represents, which we'll get into after I read this a little bit, and as the day breaketh, he said, I will not let thee go except you bless me. And he said unto him, what is thy name? And he said, Jacob, Jacob meaning the supplanter. And he said, thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. And that's when you got that change. That's when you went from a physical person to more of a spiritual or enlightened person, because then the presence of the name Israel lets me know that he has balanced his feminine and masculine, and now has ascended to become God, which is Israel, which is Isis, Ra. They come together to produce offspring, which is God, which is El. That happens inwardly as a seed and outwardly. And so, and the pineal represents both the clitoris, the penis below, and also the pineal gland, both which create, right? The spiritual up here and the physical down here.